Commander Lee Tae-min stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship moved quietly through space, far from any major trade routes. It was just another patrol mission in the outer rim, where nothing interesting ever happened. The bridge was small but efficient. Only 12 crew members worked at their stations, monitoring sensors and checking systems. The Resilience was not a big ship by Coalition standards, but it was tough. Human ships had to be tough because humans came from Earth, a world most aliens called a death world. Earth was a dangerous place. The weather could kill you. Wild animals could kill you. Even the plants could kill you. Most aliens looked at humans with curiosity and some fear. How could any species survive on such a world? But humans did more than survive. They grew strong. Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun sat at the communication station, listening to routine traffic between merchant ships. His job was boring most days. Space was big and mostly empty. Ships rarely talked to each other unless something was wrong. Then something changed. A signal came through the speakers, weak and full of static. Kim Do-hyun frowned and adjusted his equipment. The signal was coming from far away, from a system called Kepler 442. It was not on any trade route. No one went there except for mining operations. "Commander," Kim said, "I'm getting something strange. It sounds like a distress call." Lee Tae-min walked over to the communication station. "Put it on speakers." The voice that came through was clearly alien. The words were translated by the ship's computer, but the fear in the voice needed no translation. "This is High Counselor Veltar of the Valari people. We are under attack. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. The Drakthor have come with many ships. We cannot fight them alone. Please, anyone who hears this message, help us. We are hiding in the old mining stations, but they will find us soon. Please help us." The message repeated several times, then stopped. The bridge was quiet. Everyone had heard stories about the Drakthor. They were raiders who traveled from system to system, taking slaves and resources. They were strong and cruel, and most species ran when they appeared. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "that signal is 3 days old. By now they might all be dead or enslaved." Lee finished. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people who had followed him on many missions. They trusted his judgment. Dr. Park So-jin came onto the bridge. She was the ship's doctor and also knew more about alien species than anyone else on the crew. "I heard the message," she said. "The Valari are a peaceful people. They have no weapons. They focus on art and science." "How many Drakthor ships?" Lee asked. "The signal mentioned a whole fleet," Kim replied. "At least 30 ships, maybe more." Sergeant Choi Min-ho, the leader of the ship's Marines, shook his head. 30 ships? We only have one. Even if we called for help, it would take weeks for coalition forces to arrive." Everyone knew the truth. The coalition would not come. They had rules about getting involved in conflicts with the Drakthor. Too dangerous, they said. Too many lives would be lost. Better to let one small species die than risk a larger war. But Lee Tae-min was thinking. He had read reports about the Drakthor. They were strong and had many ships, but they fought in predictable ways. They relied on fear and overwhelming force. They had never fought humans before. Humans were different. Earth had taught them to be different. On Earth, everything tried to kill you, so you learned to fight back. You learned to survive when the odds were against you. You learned that sometimes you had to do what was right, even when it was dangerous. "Dr. Park," Lee said, "what do you know about Drakthor tactics?" "They attack in large groups," she replied. "They try to scare their enemies into giving up. Most species surrender when they see how many Drakthor ships there are. And if they don't surrender? The Drakthor destroy everything. They don't like long fights. They want quick victories." Lee nodded. He walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each member of his crew. "I'm going to ask you all something, and I want honest answers. That distress call is 3 days old. The Valari might all be dead by now. Even if they're alive, we would be going up against impossible odds. One ship against a fleet." He paused. "But they asked for help. They're counting on someone to care enough to try. The coalition won't come. We're the only ones who heard that message, and have the ability to respond. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Sergeant Choi was the first to speak. "Sir, my Marines and I didn't join the service to pick easy fights. If people need help, we help them." Dr. Park nodded. "The Valari are good people. They don't deserve what's happening to them." Kim looked up from his station. "My family came from Korea, where my ancestors fought against impossible odds more than once. Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies even when they're bigger than you." One by one, every crew member on the bridge voiced their agreement. They knew it was dangerous. They knew they might not survive. But they also knew it was the right thing to do. Lee smiled. This was why he was proud to serve with humans. Other species might call Earth a death world, but it had produced people who understood that some things were worth fighting for. "Kim, set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum speed." "Yes, sir." Course laid in. "Choi, get your Marines ready. We don't know what we'll find when we get there." "Already on it, sir." "Dr. Park, study everything we have about the Valari and the Drakthor. I want to know their strengths and weaknesses." As the crew prepared for what might be their last mission, Lee stood at the viewport watching the stars. In a few hours, they would jump to hyperspace. In 2 days, they would arrive at Kepler 442. They would probably find a dead system and the wreckage of Valari civilization, but maybe, just maybe, they would find survivors. And if they did, those survivors would learn that when humans heard a call for help, they answered. No matter the odds, no matter the danger. The Resilience turned toward the Kepler 442 system and began to accelerate. In the engine room, power levels rose as the ship prepared for hyperspace. In the weapons bay, Marines checked their equipment. In the medical bay, Dr. Park studied files about Valari anatomy in case she needed to treat wounded aliens. Everyone was doing their job, but everyone was also thinking the same thing. They were one small ship going to face an entire fleet. By all logic, they should turn around and report the incident to Coalition headquarters. Let someone else deal with it. But logic was not always the most important thing. Sometimes you had to listen to your heart. Sometimes you had to do what was right, even when it seemed impossible. The hyperspace jump activated, and the Resilience disappeared into the swirling lights of faster-than-light travel. Behind them, normal space was empty and quiet. Ahead of them waited either glory or death, and probably both. But they were going anyway because that's what humans did when people needed help. The Resilience dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Smoke and fire covered the third planet where the Valari lived. Huge alien ships moved around the planet like metal sharks. These were Drakthor vessels, each one 3 times bigger than the Resilience. Commander Lee Tae-min counted at least 20 ships, maybe more, hiding behind the planet. "My God," whispered Dr. Park So-jin as she stared at the destruction. Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun worked quickly at his station. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy. Readings from the planet's surface. They're still bombing the cities." "Any signs of Valari ships?" Lee asked. "No, sir. I think they destroyed them all." Sergeant Choi Min-ho studied the tactical display. "Those Drakthor ships are spread out. They're not expecting any resistance." That was when the proximity alarms started screaming. "Contact!" Kim shouted. 3 Drakthor patrol ships coming toward us. They've seen us." The enemy ships were smaller than the main fleet, but still larger than the Resilience. They moved fast and their weapons were already charging up. "All hands to battle stations," Lee ordered calmly. "Kim, try to contact any Valari survivors. Choi, get your Marines ready. Park, monitor life signs throughout the ship." The Drakthor ships opened fire first. Energy beams lanced out toward the Resilience. But Lee had spent years studying how to fight larger opponents. The human ship twisted away from the incoming fire with moves that surprised the attackers. Most alien ships fought in straight lines, trading shots until one side won. But humans had learned different lessons on their dangerous world. When something bigger than you wanted to kill you, you didn't stand still and trade blows. You moved, you dodged. You made yourself hard to hit. The Resilience spun and dove, its engines pushing it in directions the Drakthor hadn't expected. Human ships were built to handle the stress. They had to be, because humans came from a world with violent weather and unstable conditions. "Return fire," Lee commanded. The human ship's weapons were not as powerful as the Drakthor guns, but they were more accurate. While the enemy ships tried to track their spinning, diving target, the Resilients put precise shots into their weakest points. One Drakthor ship took a hit to its engine section and began to lose power. The other two split up, trying to attack from different directions. "Sir," Kim called out, "I'm getting a response from the planet. There are survivors hiding in the asteroid mining stations near the fourth planet." "Put them through," Lee ordered, still watching the tactical display as his ship continued its deadly dance with the enemy. A new alien voice came through the speakers. This one sounded older and very tired. "Unknown ship, this is High Counselor Veltar of the Valari Confederacy. Please identify yourself." "This is Commander Lee Taemin of the human vessel Resilience. We received your distress call. We're here to help." There was a long pause. "Human? You came from the Death World? But there is only one of you against so many of them." "Sometimes one is enough," Lee replied. "How many survivors do you have?" "Nearly 50,000 in various hiding places. But the Drakthor are searching. They will find us soon." Dr. Park looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm reading massive life signs from those mining stations. The Valari are packed in there with almost no supplies." The battle continued around them. The Resilience had damaged 2 enemy ships, but the third was still fighting hard. Its commander seemed smarter than the others, using better tactics. Then something unexpected happened. Captain Yoon Hyejin's voice came over the communication system. She was piloting a small stealth ship called the Shadow that had been following the Resilience at a distance. "Commander, this is Shadow. I'm seeing something interesting. The Drakthor ships all seem to follow the same patterns. When one ship changes direction, the others change too, even when it doesn't make tactical sense." Dr. Park's eyes lit up. "That's it. I've been reading about Drakthor society. They use pheromone communication, chemical signals that tell them what to do. It's like they're all connected." "Can we use that against them?" Lee asked, still focused. "On the battle? Maybe. If we could disrupt their communication system, they might become confused." The damaged Drakthor ship finally exploded, its reactor overloading. The other 2 ships became more aggressive, firing faster but with less accuracy. They seemed angry that humans had destroyed one of their own. High Counselor Veltar's voice came through again. "Human ship, you fight like no one we have ever seen. But there are too many of them. You should save yourself." "That's not how humans work," Lee replied. "We don't leave people behind." The Resilience spun around a piece of space debris and fired at the second Drakthor ship. This time the shot hit something critical. The enemy vessel stopped moving and began drifting. The third Drakthor ship tried a new tactic. Instead of chasing the fast-moving human ship, it turned toward the mining stations where the Valari were hiding. "He's going after the survivors," Choi warned. Lee made a quick decision. "Shadow, can you get close to that ship without being detected?" "Already moving," Captain Yoon replied. "Give me 2 minutes." Those were the longest 2 minutes of the battle. The Resilience had to stay between the Drakthor ship and the mining stations, taking heavy fire. The human ship's shields began to fail, and several systems took damage. But humans were used to fighting when things went wrong. On Earth, equipment failed all the time. Weather destroyed your shelter. Animals attacked when you were hurt and vulnerable. You learned to keep going even when everything seemed hopeless. "Shadow in position," Yoon reported. "Do it," Lee ordered. The stealth ship attached itself to the hull of the Drakthor vessel and began cutting through the armor with precision tools. Meanwhile, the Resilience continued to draw fire, its crew working desperately to keep shields and weapons online. Dr. Park monitored the life signs of the Valari survivors. "Sir, they're watching us fight for them. Some of them are crying." "Why?" asked Kim. "Because no one has ever tried to help them before. The Coalition always said it was too dangerous." The Drakthor ship suddenly stopped firing. Its engines went quiet and it began to drift. Captain Yoon had succeeded in disabling its main systems. "All 3 patrol ships neutralized," Choi reported. "But sir, the main fleet is moving. They know we're here." Lee looked at the tactical display. 27 Drakthor ships were turning toward their position. Each one was massive, armed with enough weapons to destroy a small planet. Veltar, he called to the Valari leader. We need to get your people out of those mining stations. How fast can you move them? Our ships were destroyed. We have only small shuttles. It would take days to evacuate everyone. We don't have days. Dr. Park had been studying her readings. Sir, I think I understand their pheromone system better now. If we could get close to their command ship and disrupt the signals, the whole fleet might become confused. That's suicide, Choi said. Their command ship will be the most heavily defended. Lee smiled grimly. Then it's a good thing we're humans. We specialize in suicide missions. He opened a channel to the shadow. Yoon, can your ship carry a small team? Yes, sir. Where are we going? Right into the middle of their fleet. We're going to teach these raiders what happens when they attack innocent people. The main Drakthor fleet was getting closer. Soon they would be in weapons range. The resilience was already damaged and would not survive a fight against so many enemies. But Lee had a plan. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but that had never stopped humans before. All hands, he announced over the ship's communication system. We came here to help people who needed help. That hasn't changed. We're going to split up and hit them from two directions. The resilience will serve as a distraction while the shadow infiltrates their command ship. He paused. I won't lie to you. This is going to be the hardest fight of our lives. But those Valari survivors are counting on us. They believe in us. Let's show them what humans can do when we set our minds to it. The crew responded with determination. They were scared, but they were also angry. The Drakthor had destroyed cities full of innocent people. They had turned a peaceful species into refugees hiding in dark holes. That was not acceptable to humans. The enemy fleet opened fire. The space around Kepler 442 lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the darkness as the Drakthor fleet attacked the lone human ship. Commander Lee Tae-min gripped the arms of his command chair as the resilience shook under. Enemy fire. Evasive maneuvers. Don't let them get a lock on us. The human ship twisted and spun through space, using every trick Lee had learned in 20 years of service. But there were so many enemy ships that avoiding all their fire was impossible. Shields down to 40%, reported Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun. Hull breach on Deck 3, added Sergeant Choi Min-ho. Repair teams are on it. Dr. Park So-jin worked at her station, studying the data they were collecting about the Drakthor ships. Sir, I'm seeing the pheromone communication patterns. Every ship responds to signals from that big one in the center. That's their command vessel. Can you track the signals? Yes, and I think I can create a disruption pattern. But someone would have to get very close to their command ship and transmit it directly into their systems. That was exactly what Captain Yoon Hye-jin was trying to do. Her stealth ship, the Shadow, was moving carefully through the enemy fleet, using the larger ships as cover. Back on the Resilience, the crew was learning what it meant to fight against impossible odds. Systems failed, repairs were made, and then different systems failed. But they kept fighting. This was what humans did best. On Earth, survival meant adapting to constant danger. Equipment broke in storms. Shelter collapsed in earthquakes. Food ran out during harsh winters, but humans kept going. They fixed what they could, worked around what they couldn't, and never gave up. Sir, Kim called out, I'm getting a message from the mining stations. The Valari want to help. Put them through. High Counselor Veltar's voice came over the speakers. Commander Lee, our people are watching your brave fight. We have some old mining equipment that could be used as weapons. Not much, but we want to contribute. Lee smiled despite the chaos around him. Veltar, just keep your people safe. We'll handle this. No, the Valari leader replied firmly. You came to help us when no one else would. Now we help you. Suddenly, small Valari ships began emerging from the mining stations. They were not warships, just converted mining vessels and cargo haulers. But they were moving to join the fight. Sir, Dr. Park said with wonder in her voice, they're actually doing it. They're fighting back. The Valari ships were slow and poorly armed. but they drew some enemy fire away from the Resilience. More importantly, they showed the Drakthor that their victims were no longer helpless. That was when the real surprise came. Major Han Gisu's voice crackled over long-range communications. "Resilience, this is the human fleet hammer. We received your transmission and came as fast as we could." Lee looked up in shock. Through the chaos of battle, he could see new contacts on the sensor screen. Human ships were dropping out of hyperspace, at the edge of the system. "Han, how many ships do you have?" 12 vessels, sir. Not enough to match their numbers, but we brought some special equipment." The new human ships were different from the Resilience. These were built for war, with heavier armor and more powerful weapons. But more importantly, they carried technology designed by engineer Oh Young-soo. Oh was a genius who specialized in making equipment work in impossible conditions. His designs could function in the radiation storms of gas giants, in the crushing gravity of heavy worlds, and in the temperature extremes of space combat. "Resilience, this is Engineer O. I'm transmitting some modifications to your weapon systems. These should punch through Drakthor armor more effectively." As the human reinforcements joined the battle, the tactical situation began to change. The Drakthor still outnumbered them, but the humans were using tactics that confused the enemy. Most space battles were fought like naval combat on ancient Earth. Ships lined up and traded shots until one side won. But humans had learned different lessons from their dangerous world. They fought like pack hunters, coordinating attacks on single targets. They used the asteroids and debris in the system as cover. They struck fast and then disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Drakthor were not prepared for this kind of warfare. Their pheromone communication system worked well when everyone followed the same plan, but it made them slow to adapt when the plan failed. Medic Lim Na-young was working in the medical bay of the Resilience, treating wounded crew members. But she was also monitoring the Valari ships that had joined the fight. "Sir," she called to the bridge, "one of the Valari vessels is badly damaged. They have casualties. Can we help them?" "I can try, but I'd need to get over to their ship. Our medical bay is designed for humans." Lee made a quick decision. "Do it. Take a shuttle and whatever supplies you need." It was dangerous to send a shuttle across the battlefield, but that was what humans did. They didn't abandon their allies, even when those allies were a different species they had met only hours ago. Lim Na-young piloted her shuttle through the chaos of battle, dodging energy beams and debris. She reached the damaged Valari ship and docked with it. Inside, she found something that broke her heart. The Valari crew was badly hurt, but they were still trying to fight. Their ship was falling apart around them, but they refused to retreat. "Why?" she asked them as she began treating their wounds. "Why are you doing this? You could hide in the mining stations where it's safe." The Valari captain looked at her with large, sad eyes. "Because you came for us. No one has ever come for us before. We will not hide while you die protecting us." Meanwhile, Captain Yoon was getting closer to the Drakthor command ship. The massive vessel was surrounded by smaller, escort ships, but the Shadow was designed for stealth missions. "Shadow to Resilience," she whispered into her communicator. "I'm almost in position. Dr. Park, is your disruption signal ready?" "Ready and waiting," Park replied. "But Yoon, once you transmit it, every Drakthor ship in the fleet will know where you are." "I understand. Just make sure it works." The battle was reaching a critical point. The humans and Valari were fighting hard, but they were taking heavy losses. Several human ships had been destroyed, and many more were damaged. But something was happening that the Drakthor didn't understand. The longer the fight went on, the more determined the humans became. Most species got weaker as they took losses. Humans got angry. War Chief Groknash, the Drakthor field commander, watched the battle from his flagship. He was confused and frustrated. The humans should have surrendered by now. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships were damaged, their crews were tired, and they had no hope of victory, but they kept fighting. "These Deathworlders are insane," he growled to his subordinates. "They fight like cornered animals." One of his officers replied, "Sir, perhaps we should withdraw and call for reinforcements. They are proving more difficult than expected." "No, Groknash roared. "We are the Drakthor. We do not retreat from inferior species. Send all remaining ships to attack their largest vessel. Crush them." But as he gave that order, Captain Yoon reached the hull of his command ship. The shadow attached itself to the massive vessel like a tiny insect on the back of a giant. Yoon began cutting through the armor, looking for access to the communication systems. Inside the Drakthor ship, alarms began to sound. They knew something was attached to their hull, but they couldn't figure out what it was. "Park," Yoon called. "I'm in position. Transmitting your disruption signal now." The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Drakthor fleet, ship commanders suddenly found themselves cut off from their pheromone network. The chemical signals that told them what to do and when to do it were replaced by chaos. Some ships stopped moving entirely, their crews paralyzed by the loss of guidance. Others began firing at random targets, including each other. The careful coordination that had made the Drakthor fleet so dangerous fell apart in minutes. "It's working," Dr. Park shouted with joy. "Their communication system is completely disrupted." Lee saw his chance. "All human ships concentrate fire on their command vessel. Take it down." The combined firepower of the human fleet focused on War Chief Groknash's flagship. The massive ship's shields began to fail under the sustained attack. But the Drakthor weren't finished yet. Even in their confusion, they were still dangerous. And somewhere in their fleet, a new commander was taking control. The Drakthor command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. War Chief Groknash and his entire crew were destroyed instantly. For a moment, the enemy fleet seemed lost and confused. But the victory didn't last long. A new voice boomed across, all communication channels speaking in the harsh Drakthor language. The ship's computer translated the words for Commander Lee Tae-min and his crew. "This is Supreme Commander Graktor the Unyielding. I have come to restore order to this rabble. All Drakthor ships, ignore the pheromone disruption. Follow my direct commands only." On the tactical display, Lee watched as a massive new ship dropped out of hyperspace. This vessel was twice the size of the previous command ship, with armor that looked impenetrable and weapons that made the other Drakthor ships look like toys. "My God," whispered Dr. Park Sojin. "That ship must carry 50,000 troops." Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun was scanning the new arrival. "Sir, it's not affected by our disruption signal. They must have shielded communication systems." Graktor's ship immediately began restoring order to the Drakthor fleet. Elite vessels that had been held in reserve joined the battle, and these crews seemed better trained than the others. "All human vessels," Lee called to his fleet. "We've got a new problem." Major Han Gisu's voice came back over the communicator. "We see it, Lee. This one's different. He studied our tactics." It was true. As the reformed Drakthor fleet attacked, they used new strategies designed to counter human unpredictability. They set up crossfire patterns that were hard to avoid. They used their superior numbers more effectively. Several human ships took heavy damage in the first few minutes of the renewed battle. The crew of the Resilience worked frantically to keep their vessel operational as systems failed around them. But then something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on the sensor screens. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around the system, but these weren't Drakthor reinforcements. "Sir," Kim called out excitedly, "we're getting identification signals from coalition species. The Centaurians, the Altarians, even some Rigelian battlecruisers." Admiral Bae Su-min's voice came over the fleet communications. "This is the Human Colonial Alliance Fleet Dragon. We brought some friends." Lee stared at the tactical display in amazement. More than 100 ships had arrived, representing dozens of different species. Many of them were from worlds that the Coalition had written off as too dangerous or too primitive. A new voice joined the communications channel. "Human fleet, this is Captain Thex of the Altarian Deep Guard. We heard you were fighting the Drakthor without waiting for Coalition approval." Another voice followed. "This is Commander Vexara of the Centaurian Border Patrol. We decided it was time someone showed these raiders that not all species run when they appear." Young Valari scientist Velnara was working with Dr. Park aboard the Resilience, combining human engineering with Valari energy manipulation techniques. Together, they had created new weapons that could function even when other systems failed. "Commander Lee," Velnara said, My people want to give you something. She handed him a small device that glowed with soft blue light. This is a Volari Harmony crystal. It represents our highest honor. We give it only to those who have shown perfect courage in the face of impossible odds. Lee accepted the crystal with respect, but his attention was focused on the battle. Even with all the reinforcements, they were still facing a superior enemy. Graktor's ship alone could probably destroy half the Allied fleet. Sir, Sergeant Choi Minho reported, Marine shuttles from the Allied ships are requesting permission to board damaged Drakthor vessels. They want to disable them from the inside. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the kind of creative thinking that humans excelled at. Instead of trying to destroy the heavily armored enemy ships from the outside, small teams would infiltrate them and attack their most vulnerable systems. Permission granted, but tell them to be careful. The Drakthor don't take prisoners. Captain, Yoon Hye-jin had managed to escape from the destroyed command ship, but her stealth vessel was badly damaged. Lee, I can still fight, but I need a new target. Lee studied the tactical display. Graktor's massive ship was the key to everything. As long as it remained operational, the Drakthor fleet would continue to fight in an organized manner. Can we? You get close to Graktor's ship? Maybe, but it won't be easy. He's got twice as many escort ships, and they're all watching for stealth attacks. Dr. Park looked up from her work with Velnara. Sir, we've been analyzing the energy readings from that ship. It's not just big, it's also old. Very old. I think it might be vulnerable to resonance attacks. Explain. If we could match the frequency of its hull vibrations, we might be able to create structural failures, like an opera singer breaking a glass with her voice. Engineer. Oh Young-soo's voice crackled over the communicator from one of the other human ships. I heard that. Give me 5 minutes and I can modify our weapons to produce the right frequency. The Allied fleet was taking heavy losses, but they were also learning. Each species brought different strengths to the battle. The Altarians were excellent at hit-and-run attacks. The Centaurians had powerful shields. The Rigelians were masters of electronic warfare. And in the middle of it all, the small group of Volari ships continued to fight with a determination that amazed everyone. They had been peaceful for so long that most people forgot they could be warriors when they needed to be. Medic Lim Na-young had returned to the Resilience after treating wounded Volari, but now she was back in a shuttle heading for another damaged ship. This time it was a Centaurian cruiser that had taken a direct hit from Graktor's main guns. Why do you keep doing this? Asked the Centaurian captain as she worked on his injuries. We are not your species. We barely know each other. Because that's what humans do, she replied simply. We don't abandon people who need help. The Centaurian stared at her with large compound eyes. Your species is very strange, but also very brave. Elder Velmoth, the oldest of the Volari survivors, was watching the battle from the mining station. He had lived through the last great war that his people had fought, more than 200 years ago. I never thought I would see such courage again, he told the younger Volari around him. These humans fight not for conquest or glory, but because they believe it is right. The battle reached its climax when Engineer O finished modifying the Allied weapons. Every ship in the fleet began firing at Graktor's massive vessel, their weapons tuned to the exact frequency that Dr. Park and Velnara had calculated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The enemy ship's armor was too thick and its shields too strong. But slowly, cracks began to appear in its hull. The resonance frequency was working. Graktor himself appeared on the main communication channel, his image broadcast to every ship in the system. He was huge even for a Drakthor with scars covering his face and arms. Deathworlders, he roared. You think your tricks will defeat me? I am Graktor the Unyielding. I have conquered 100 worlds. I will not be beaten by primitives from a single planet. Lee opened his own communication channel so that everyone could hear his reply. You're wrong about something, Graktor. We're not primitives from a single planet. Look around you. We're representatives from dozens of worlds, dozens of species, all of them united by one simple idea. He paused, looking at the tactical display where Allied ships from across the galaxy were fighting together. The idea that when someone calls, for help good people answer. The idea that bullies should be stopped no matter how big they are. The idea that no one should suffer alone when others can help. Grachter's ship was beginning to break apart as the resonance frequency did its work. But the Supreme Commander wasn't finished. He ordered all remaining Drakthor ships to ram the Allied vessels in suicide attacks. Most of the enemy commanders obeyed, but some hesitated. They had never seen anything like this battle. Species that should have been enemies were working together. Ships that should have fled were standing their ground. Warriors that should have surrendered were fighting harder as the odds got worse. It was confusing and frightening to beings who believed that only strength mattered, but to the humans and their allies, it was just another day of doing what was right. Grachtor's massive ship finally broke apart, its hull torn open by the resonance weapons. The Supreme Commander's roar of rage was cut short as his command center exploded. But the battle was far from over. The remaining Drakthor ships, following their leader's final order, began ramming attacks against the Allied fleet. These were suicide runs, designed to cause as much damage as possible before the ships were destroyed. Commander Lee Tae-min watched in horror as 3 Drakthor vessels smashed into a Centaurian cruiser, destroying all 4 ships instantly. The HFY Allied fleet was winning, but the cost was enormous. All ships, evasive patterns, he ordered. Don't let them ram you. But some of the Drakthor ships were getting through. The Altarian flagship took a direct hit and exploded. 2 human destroyers were rammed and destroyed. The space around Kepler 442 was filled with wreckage and the bodies of brave warriors. That was when President Kim Jae-won's image appeared on every communication screen in the system. This is President Kim of the Human Colonial Alliance speaking. To all ships in the Kepler 442 system, he said calmly. I want every being in this battle to hear what I'm about to say. The fighting continued, but everyone was listening. For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by fear. Fear of the strong. Fear of standing up to bullies. Fear of doing what's right because it might be dangerous. A Drakthor ship tried to ram the Resilience, but Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun managed to avoid it at the last second. President Kim continued his speech. Today, that ends. Today we declare that no species will stand alone against oppression. No cry for help will go unanswered. No bully will be allowed to terrorize the innocent without facing consequences. Dr. Park So-jin was monitoring the communications from the Drakthor ships. Sir, some of them are breaking off their attacks. They're trying to escape. It was true. About half of the remaining enemy ships had stopped their suicide runs and were attempting to retreat. The sight of their supposedly invincible Supreme Commander's ship in pieces had broken their morale, but the other half kept fighting. These were the true believers, the ones who would rather die than admit defeat. Admiral Bae Soo-min coordinated the final phase of the battle. The Allied fleet formed a defensive sphere around the Valari mining stations while pursuing the retreating Drakthor ships. Let them go, Lee ordered. The ones who are running have learned their lesson. It's the ones who keep fighting that we need to worry about. Captain Yoon Hae-jin, flying her damaged stealth ship, managed to disable 2 more enemy vessels by targeting their engines. She was becoming a legend among the Allied pilots. Engineer Oh Young-soo had transferred to the Resilience and was working with Velnara to develop even more advanced weapons. If we combine human durability with Valari energy manipulation, we can create systems that work even when everything else fails, he explained. The young Valari scientist nodded eagerly. My people have always focused on harmony and peace, but you humans have shown us that sometimes you must fight to protect harmony. Medic Lim Na-young was working frantically in the medical bay, treating wounded from multiple species. She had become an expert in alien anatomy during the battle, learning to save lives she had never seen before. Doctor, called one of her patients, a wounded Rigelian pilot. Why do humans risk so much to help others? She paused in her work. Because if we don't help each other, who will? We all share the same galaxy. We all want to live in peace. But peace only works when good people are willing to stand up to bad people. The final Drakthor ship exploded in a burst of flame and debris. The space around Kepler 442 went quiet except for the rescue operations beginning throughout the system. "Hi," Counselor Veltar's voice came over the communication system. "To all the brave warriors who answered our call for help, the Valari people offer our deepest gratitude. You came when no one else would. You fought when victory seemed impossible. You stood with us when we had nothing to offer in return." Elder Velmoth appeared on the communication screen, his ancient face wet with tears. "I have lived for 300 years and I have never seen such courage. Today, I learned what it means to have true friends." President Kim continued his AWE broadcast to the galaxy. "What happened here today will not be forgotten. We are establishing a new alliance, the Deathworld Pact. Any species whose homeworld has made them strong, any people who believe in protecting the innocent, any civilization that refuses to bow to bullies, you are welcome to join us." Coalition Admiral Zix Andra arrived with a large fleet just as the battle was ending. She had finally received permission from Coalition headquarters to intervene, but she was too late. "Human vessels," she called over the communicator. "This is Admiral Zixandra of the Coalition Defense Force. We came as soon as we could get approval." Lee's response was polite but firm. "Thank you, Admiral, but the situation is under control. The Valari are safe, and the Drakthor threat has been neutralized. But the Coalition has protocols for this type of situation. There are procedures to follow, reports to file, diplomatic consequences to consider. The only consequence that matters is that innocent people are alive because we acted when they needed help," Lee replied. "Everything else is just paperwork." In the days that followed, the Valari formally withdrew from the Coalition and joined the Human Colonial Alliance. They were not the only ones. Dozens of species that had been ignored or dismissed by the major powers asked to join the new alliance. The Deathworld Pact grew quickly. Species from harsh planets, beings who had learned to survive in impossible conditions, civilizations that valued courage over bureaucracy. They all wanted to be part of something that actually protected people instead of just talking about it. Velnara worked with human scientists to develop new technologies that combined the best ideas from multiple species. The weapons and shields they created were designed to work in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Captain Yoon was promoted to admiral and given command of a new stealth fleet. Her job was to watch for distress signals and respond immediately, without waiting for permission from politicians. Dr. Park established a new medical corps that trained doctors from multiple species to treat anyone who needed help, regardless of their biology or politics. Sergeant Choi became the first commander of the Pact Marines, an elite force made up of warriors from the galaxy's most dangerous worlds, and Commander Lee Tae-min was given the new rank of Fleet Admiral and placed in charge of the Pact's rapid response forces. His first official act was to broadcast a message to every inhabited system in the galaxy. "This is Fleet Admiral Lee Tae-min of the Deathworld Pact. If you are in danger, if you need help, if someone is threatening your people, call us. We will come. We don't care how far away you are. We don't care how dangerous the situation is. We don't care if our politicians think it's a bad idea." He paused, looking out at the stars through the viewport of his new flagship. "Because that's what friends do. They answer when you call. They stand with you when you're in trouble. They fight for you when you can't fight for yourself." The message was heard throughout the galaxy. In the Coalition capital, politicians debated what this meant for galactic stability. In the corporate boardrooms, executives worried about what it would mean for profits, but in the slums and colonies, on the frontier worlds and mining stations, ordinary people smiled and felt a little bit safer. Because now they knew that if the worst happened, if pirates or raiders or tyrants came for them, someone would answer their call for help. Someone would come. The Deathworld Pact had been born from a single act of courage by a small human ship answering a desperate plea for help. Now it was becoming something larger, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple idea that good people should help each other. It was a very human idea, and it was spreading. 6 months later, Commander Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching a new crew prepare for their first mission. They had received a distress signal from a remote system where miners were being attacked by pirates. "Sir," called his communications officer, "the local authorities say the situation is too dangerous for intervention. They recommend we wait for coalition forces." Lee smiled. "Tell them we appreciate their concern, but we don't wait. Set course for the Vega system. Maximum speed." "Yes, sir. Should I notify coalition headquarters of our intentions?" "Send them a message after we arrive. By then, the miners will be safe and the pirates will be gone." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward another impossible mission. Because that's what humans did when people needed help. They answered the call,